Hey everyone, Casella here. Before we get going, a couple quick announcements. We'll be posting about this on the Ancillary Review of Books this week, but you might be hearing it here first. This December at the ARB is going to be a little different, a little lighter publishing schedule than usual, and that's because we are prepping for some exciting changes next year, with a bit of website overhaul, some admin updates, and big thing, a fundraiser coming in the spring, so more information on that soon. This won't affect the podcast schedule, but please keep your eye on Ancillary for some year-end roundups and other fun stuff. As always, joining our Patreon or just spreading the word would be very cool of you. Okay, on to the show. A critic is a creature who has views quite like a camel's. Flowers and fruit he scorns. In the flower garden of the honeyed muse, he starves unless he finds a meal of thorns. Hello, and welcome to A Meal of Thorns, a critical book club from the Ancillary Review of Books. I'm Jake Brookins. Each episode, we take a book, usually something science fiction or fantasy related somehow, occasionally fruity, occasionally flowery, and we ask a writer, critic, or scholar to walk us through it. What's noteworthy, what's troubling, what's great or terrible about it. Today we are reading Ned Bowman's venomous Lumpsucker, and I am so delighted to introduce our guest, Cameron Kunzelman. Cameron is an academic and critic who works on science fiction, games, and how they affect us. You can hear Cameron on a daunting array of podcasts, including the Range Touch Group with subseries on Stephen King, genre fiction, games, and game studies. His writing has appeared in Polygon, Paste, Waypoint, and more. His first book, The World is Born from Zero, on philosophy and/of games in speculative fiction, came out in 2022. And his latest book, Everything is Permitted, is hot off the University of Minnesota presses as this episode comes out. We'll talk about that a bit more later. But first, Cameron, thanks so much for joining. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm great.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you are here to talk about this book. Before we dive into it, anything else you have been reading or working on that's good that you want to talk about?
I have a list of things to get to. It's great. I'll listen to this show every time it comes out. So of course, I've much like Sean F. Ultra was on the show several weeks ago. Sean and I are, we chat regularly, and so much like Sean, I have a list of grievances I must now come out into the show to get.
All right.
The first of which is I hate the poem. I hate the poem because I hate it. Where is it from? I'm sure you've said this on the show and I just didn't know.
So it's actually the other way around. The podcast is from the poem.
Whoa!
Yeah. So it's from Bhartrhari, who is, I believe, a 6th century poet. And I just stumbled across this somewhere. I was it somehow came across my reading list. I read it. I had been, as all people of a certain age and background must do, fighting down starting a podcast for many years. Had been resisting this urge, and then I read that poem, and I was like, "Shoot, I'm done. I have to do it." And I ordered a mic and registered a domain that day.
The poem did it.
The poem did it.
The poem got you.
That was the one. Yep. Just the idea that 1,500 years ago, people were griping about their critics and griping about the notes people left on their poetry. I was like, yep.
Maybe it's the way you read the poem that makes it, because you read it so gently. You know what I mean? You're like, a meal of thorns. You do it.
Okay.
When in reality, I guess it is a much more negative. I know it's negative in my heart, but the way you read it's so gentle. And I just think, is that what a critic is? That's not what we're doing. We're having a good time over here. We're not dining on a meal of thorns.
Maybe next time I'll read it in an over-the-top, cartoon villain kind of...
like a death metal kind of...
Yeah.
Or a Skeletor. You're going toward a Skeletor.
I was thinking more like...
a meal of thorns!
I was thinking like a Gilbert Gottfried kind of, that kind of... Yeah. All right, we'll see what I can whip up.
Okay, yeah. Good. Yeah, just whoever the next person is, just spring that on them with no context. See what happens.
What are the other gripes you have about the podcast?
That's all I have.
Now that
I felt I was going to set myself up so I had a bunch. I don't have a bunch.
Okay.
That's the one. Every time it starts, I'm always on my way to work, and I'm like, this poem and its hatred of criticism. But that's okay. I don't know what else I'm doing. We're doing an Alan Moore unit over on Shelved by Genre. You go to rangetouch.com to learn about that. You got to get the promo in. I was telling you before we started the podcast, I've recorded more than 4 hours about From Hell, the back half of From Hell today. And I think we spent more than an hour on just chapter 10. So that's really been taking up a lot of my life. Trying to see what else I got here on the old desk. Nothing really. Got Steve Moore's Somnium. You familiar with Steve Moore?
No, I don't know this.
Steve Moore, no relation to Alan Moore. It's like one of Alan Moore's best friends. And so working on that, I guess. Just did Mark Fisher's Capitalist Realism over on Game Study Buddies. This might be out before that is, but we did that, so I just finished reading that. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just I'm living in the world, doing stuff.
Fisher's a good companion to this novel.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. I just started. I'm maybe like halfway into Christopher Brown's A Natural History of Empty Lots, which I'm really enjoying. It's really interesting. It's hit me a little bit. Like I want to be overall positive of it. I like nature writing.
Be negative. We have Emile Thorns over here.
So I like nature writing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it when nature writing gets high on its own supply and kind of like just starts being too profound. You know what I mean?
Bill Bryson, like he did us good and he did us dirty at the same time.
I mean, I think it goes all the way back. Like I think any nature writer you read who is good, like they're always walking that line, right? Like, I hate to say it, but like Edward Abbey can be kind of precious, you know? Like I like Edward Abbey, but it can be kind of precious. Mm-hmm. So it's got a little bit of that, but I love the subject matter of it. And it's, a lot of it's around Austin and just, taking this, nature experiencing angle on just walking around actual like built environments. I really dig. And like, so I'm here in Buffalo, New York, which is very much like living in the ruins in some way. It was like this city of 1 million people that shrunk to like 250,000 people. Mm-hmm. And so you just, anywhere you go, you bike 20 minutes any direction, you're in these like odd landscapes that are sort of touched by industry, but they've overgrown. And, I grew up in coal country down in Pennsylvania and Appalachia, which again is like, on the one hand, I was in the quote unquote wilderness, in like these very sparsely populated areas. But everywhere you go, you can find, this big pile of tailings or like this weird pond that's a weird color because it's been leaching minerals in there for 60 years. And so that sensitivity to like you're sort of in nature, but not a pristine place, and really like kind of dwelling on that and thinking about that, I really dig. Because I think the capital N nature breakdown that's a bad way to think about it.
Yeah. And if you live in North America, you are living in a place that has been farmed and agriculturally managed for 80,000 years, right?
Right.
In a very serious and real and intense way, in a way that is illegible, right, to colonizers often. That's the pristine nature North American narrative, right? But everywhere you turn, everywhere you read about it, everywhere you learn about indigenous practices. I'm in Georgia. I'm in central Georgia. This is Muskogee. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, everything around here has been shaped in a very direct way by people who needed to do that in order to manage the land in order to get specific outcomes, right? So yeah, I think I'm pretty sensitive to that in the sense that even when you're walking through the woods, you're walking in what until fairly recently was still managed, right? Mm-hmm. Just illegible to, concrete and steel.
Yeah. But yeah, so reading that, I also should just say positive about the book. I really like how it frames, not too preciously, the kind of like the encounter with wilderness, like what it's like when you just kind of realize like, oh, there's a fox over there, like, oh, there's a hawk up there, like when you sort of realize that there's another thinking thing near you in this way that's not necessarily scary, but that can be, I think, kind of like profound in a genuine way. And also just kind of cool. Like, I don't know, critters are cool. I was thinking about that reading this book a lot and just how much, not like this, like, again, this big capital N nature with like this like built-in political stance, but look, actually just critters are cool. We probably shouldn't kill all the critters.
Yeah, there are other things that like think and perceive, and maybe it's worthwhile to evaluate them as that, as opposed to like just a thing to shoot or get rid of or make convenient for us. Yeah, and it takes so much work and distancing to get to that mindset where you can do that distancing in the first place. Because I think it's pretty, people's reactions to animals are pretty, I don't know, unfiltered when they happen in reality. It's only like
material and technological systems that keep that away, that make that easy to do. Even all the like hunters and fishers that I grew up around have what I think of now as like a fairly like spiritual analysis to how they thought about it, you know?
Yeah, if you were to ask me, like, is it any random, like, academic or any person who in my life, right? Because I care a lot about animals. I don't eat meat. I haven't for a very long time. I take very seriously the idea of stewardship of nature in a very direct way. And I have colleagues and friends and people I work with and people who are like in that universe of stuff, who ostensibly also care about all those things. But when push comes to shove, I think I would rather take a random person who shoots deer regularly and their ethical stance toward that thing than I would, a random person I'm eating lunch with. Because a lot of people have, I think, ideology that has no practices around these ideas.
Right.
They have thoughts about what is like the proper way to be, but they don't do anything positive or negative. They simply just live. Where at least the people who are doing it. My dad at some point he was a regular hunter doing that kind of thing, and at some point he was like, I don't really feel like I need to shoot these things anymore. Like I just don't. It just kind of ran out of him, and I think it's because of that regular encounter with deer and turkeys or whatever as a living thing that exists, and part of being a hunter is observing them. It's why like big game hunting is fundamentally evil. It's fundamentally evil in many ways. I think I'll confidently say that. But one of the ways it's really profoundly evil is that it's so managed, right? Like your job as a big game hunter, for the most part, if you're doing the thing where you're going and shooting things that there aren't that many of at this point. For the most part, you don't have to work too hard. You get in a little Jeep and you go out, you might camp a little bit. Someone else does all the work for you and you maybe pull the trigger, but maybe not. Maybe you're just standing there to take the photo, as opposed to, people who part of hunting is waiting for the right thing to shoot at. And so, I'm not a hunter. I'm not really interested in protecting the sanctity of doing that. I live in I live out in the country, but like there's houses near me and people are shooting all the time, and I don't want to get shot in the woods, right? The likelihood of that happening is like higher than zero, which I don't like. But yeah, I think I take at least seriously those things that you're talking about, this like kind of encounter. And yeah, we've got foxes and raccoons and an owl. We watched an owl grow up in our front yard this summer. I saw it attack a fox the other day. Pretty wild. My wife did.
That is wild.
So interesting stuff.
My favorite around here is we've got a pretty good predatory bird population here. And in the snows here, which we get quite a lot of in the winter, is just finding these like weird attack poofs. Where they've like tried to strike something and maybe they've got it, maybe they haven't. And you can just see like this in this like big expanse of snow, just this huge sort of like explosion where an owl or a red tail or something like dropped. Yeah, we have vultures that winter in a big tree behind our house, and so you go out during the winter and there's just like 14 of them and they're doing their big cartoon bird looking thing. Yeah, nature's cool. Nature's cool. A big point to be made. Nature's cool. Nature's cool. We probably shouldn't get rid of it in its entirety.
Yeah, let's not get rid of it. I mean, I don't have high hopes on this one, but let's not get rid of it.
Let's talk about this book. That's a nice segue. So today we are talking about Venomous Lumpsucker by Ned Bowman. This was published by Hodder and Stoughton in 2022. It's Bowman's fifth novel. It won the Arthur C. Clarke Award for British Science Fiction. So it's set in an undated but very near future. The novel is a black comedy about financial speculation, animal intelligence, and extinction. In this world, an attempt to mitigate biosphere collapse by issuing extinction credits has led to a complicated and perhaps predictable industry built around trading and gaming them. So our two main characters here are Mark Halyard, who's an extinction industry bro, who finds himself in a bad situation when a little bit of financial crime connected to the venomous lumpsucker goes very wrong, and Karen Ressaint, who's an animal intelligence evaluator, and she's come to some very dark conclusions about humanity based on this extinction. So they're seeking the last living population of little fish, and they wind up bouncing around together around the Baltic and European coasts, meeting a variety of odd, bleakly funny and kind of cyberpunky characters and ideas as they go. Also, I should mention for people who are not familiar with the, I believe, genus or family of lumpsuckers, they are real fish and they are adorable and weird. and they have little like suckers, and they stick on stuff. There's like little balls. They're great. Cameron, tell me about your relationship with this book.
Did someone review that? Did someone review this for y'all?
I don't think so. I reviewed this for the Chicago Review of Books.
Maybe then I read it there. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, this is truly a book that I did not know anything about, and someone was talking about it maybe a year ago. I don't know, somewhere around in there. And so it was either you, maybe like Abigail Nussbaum. Somebody mentioned it, and I read the little thing, and I was like, that seems cool. And I picked it up on a whim and read it. So yeah, like I know on this show sometimes people have like a really like, you're like I when I was 14, you know, you're like, well, that's a really cool, you know, that's a really profound statement about the relationship. I simply read the description and I thought that seems pretty cool, and I read the book, I think on an airplane, and I thought this book is great. And then when I was done with it, I recommended it to a bunch of different people, and because there's a lot of, it is a deceptively. It's a Neil Stephenson-esque book, right? So it's a book where like there's a forward driving action plot that's in the 30 seconds in the future. There's all this like really important politicking that goes on off screen, but then the effects happen to our characters, and sometimes you know about that, sometimes you don't. So it has almost like a techno thriller style plot, I would say. But it's really kind of a classic science fiction novel in the sense that it's a novel of ideas. Like, it's just, what if these kinds of systems existed? What if they did the thing? What would happen if you had to interact with those? And I find that in some ways refreshing. I think if I have a friction point with a lot of contemporary science fiction fantasy is that it is so profoundly character driven. It's just like I think that people like you, people like Abigail, people who are reviewing books regularly, like current and new books, I think y'all have a much finer perception for the differences in character and characterization. To me, the vast majority of current, especially the past couple years, science fiction fantasy characters, they're all identical to me. I really have a hard time understanding the like fine-grained crenulations in between these people who are like staring at the camera and telling me how to politically feel about whatever ethical issue is appearing. And what I kind of really enjoyed about this book is it's so driven by plot that we have sketches of these characters, but really the sketch is like there's an incredibly depressed woman and there's an incredibly dumb man. And they meet, and then they like deal with a bunch of Neil Stephenson-esque scientific problems, and then the book ends. For lack of a better word. I think there's a reason why this one you said the Arthur C. Clarke. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting winning that award, and not, as far as I know, not really being in discussion for any of the other major awards. Was it shortlisted or anything?
Right.
Yeah, that checks out to me. This is like an anti-Hugo book, I think.
No, I think you're right. I've been trying to find a better way to talk about the character thing that bugs me in a lot of. It's not just like that it's tropey. A lot like the bulk of the books that are sort of like mainstream published and mainstream pushed have this very certain thing about how they work that is based on a conception of how character work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That rubs me weird. Something about the idea of characters being, I don't want to say psychologically real, but sort of like graspable in this fanish way that I can sort of like easily draw kind of a circle around them. I don't want to bring everything back to like all sins go back to being like television, but in this way that feels more like, when you do a television character, you need to establish like first episode.
Yeah.
Here's our grizzled but lovable veteran, and here's our hotshot maverick, newbie. And you establish that real quickly, and then you hold on to that. And it feels like that kind of thing. And it's interesting you mentioned the thriller aspect here, because one thing I have noticed so much about a lot of science fiction and fantasy that I have loved the most over the last 5-10 years, new stuff, is stuff that's either doing something totally different and sort of almost hard to comprehend what it's doing. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking stuff like Vajra Chandrasekhara's stuff.
I was just thinking about Rake's Fall. Yeah,
Rake's Fall. I think I'm on my third reading of that. I still would not want to summarize it or attempt to outline it for someone.
Yeah, I don't need to know. I understand notionally what occurred in the book, and the repetition stuff I think is really cool, and the kind of shadow war between two factions that kind of gets resolved, and maybe it is two factions, maybe it's not, all that kind of stuff. It's a book that continually produces mystery and not secrets, right? I love the good old-fashioned distinction between, mystery is a thing that has no answer, and a secret's a thing where you don't know the answer. It's a mystery and not a secret, and that's great. Please stop producing things that are just secrets that you haven't told me the answer to. Don't care about that at all. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Those are the things that make me the most interested too.
So that's the one type, is like where it's kind of doing this whole other thing. But the other kind that I like the most is when they have really figured out a like generic root plot structure, and that's like the skeleton and the muscles driving the thing, where it's like it is a heist, it is a murder mystery, and this is a techno thriller, right? Like this with a very different tone, right? This could be a Crichton novel, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it uses that to keep everything moving, and then has all this other stuff on top of it in a way that I think, works great. As I do love as much as like the characters are just sketches, and I don't want this to come across as like a book of deep psychological realism or something like that. I do love the dyad Racine and Halyard here.
Oh yeah,
they're so good.
Yeah,
and I think Halyard is fantastic because it would be so easy to make him just the villain.
Yeah.
But instead, he's like a dumb, sympathetic guy of exactly the kind of guy who's like all over the internet and the manager at every business you've ever gone into and in charge of every bank you've ever gone. You know what I mean? How he like has this kind of informed but not intelligent way of trying to present like counter arguments and hypotheticals. And then if Racine pushes him even slightly, like, well, do you really believe that? He'll be like, well, no, but someone could make the case that. It's like, well, then why are you, wasting
he's a drowning grifter.
Yeah.
He's someone who's kind of, and I do like that he's the tail being wagged by the global economy, right? Like, he's just a symptom. That's why he's so good, right? And that's why all those other figures you just talked about, everyone's a symptom there, right? You have to be wagged by the financial institution. You have to be wagged by corporate sales expectations, right? Like I don't, this is not, it's not a personal attack on those people. Like I'm wagged by the education system, you know what I mean? And like, which that's a hard thing to be wagged by, the past, 6 months or so. It's a rough way to be in the world. But I do like that. Yeah. He's so bought in on the speculative economy that is animal life that he thought he could short it. And because that's what the book is. The book, as you described, it is. He tries to short the shares of extinction credits. The extinction credit economy goes upside down because we actually need them now. Like they actually matter a lot. And so because of that, because it's this cap and trade kind of scenario, very Obama level politics, era politics.
Yeah.
This idea of like, well, what if we could just use capitalism to like do the thing? And because of that, right, he doesn't know what to do. His only thought about what to do is to like put a Band-Aid over the gushing wound that is this speculative collapse of economy. And that's great. Like that's a guy in trouble with a bank loan. That's a time told, that's a crime. That's crime novels. That's Neuromancer in some ways. It's good. It's good stuff. And yeah, like you said, every opportunity he's trying to explain away or like provide an out for her to give him an out. And, she has no investment in doing that.
There's something about, this is like a too big argument that I haven't pre-formulated, but there's something about this moment in reality where there are, we're in this, whatever you want to call it, polycrisis, right? Where
the trouble, we're staying with the trouble.
We're really, the trouble's staying with us.
Yeah.
There is such a level of rhetorical sophistication to sort of like judo fend away the seriousness of it, right? We're like, there's multiple genocides going on and we're paying for some of them. And like, we're seeing this like massive right-wing swing, right? Like around the globe. And like, there's climate change looming over everything in a way that like part of the reason this novel I like so much. And like, I do think it's darkly funny, but it's also just kind of a relief to take it seriously for a second. I know a lot of people got really upset. Well, not upset with, but Kim Stanley Robinson's The Ministry for the Future.
Yeah. I think upset's the right word. People were pretty deeply critical of that and thought some of the things should not have been put on paper.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we'll even like be sort of proud about not reading it because like I've heard it's so traumatic, in the beginning. And to me, like, and it's also really funny to talk about that because that's like 30 pages of a 600-page book, is the heat wave. But to me, I'm not saying I liked that part, but to have this thing that, like, if you have like a tiny modicum of education in this stuff, that like every headline you see about global science, you kind of are getting a picture of like what's really written on the wall pretty clearly.
Yeah.
And it's never discussed that way in public.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have a novel to take that seriously is sort of a relief. I get almost kind of like giddy reading this novel, even though like this novel is very, very sad, right? In a lot of ways, it's very, very bleak.
Yeah.
But it's that sense of relief coupled with the fact that he's a funny writer and he's a punny writer.
Yeah.
And he likes playing around with these fun ideas. I think sort of makes this sort of feedback for me that makes it even funnier in this strange way.
Yeah. I think a lot about this, and I take the point that people are making about the KSR stuff, and several different KSR books kind of play in that territory, right? So I take the point of like, there is a kind of like, I don't want to sit. I don't think people are avoiding it, but they take it as to be extreme, the kind of flatly described massacre of people by climate, right? And implicitly the massacre of human beings by other human beings who purposely ignored it. And I really think, I'm in Georgia. I'm in the subtropical region of the United States, even though it's not really talked about that way. We are subtropical. I have a reasonable belief that the climate will kill me one day, and I don't mean that in a dismissive way, obviously not in the same way that's talked about in that book, but I'm in a zone of the earth in which heat is going to be is already a major problem, like an unbelievable problem. I mean, we're hitting lots of extreme high humidity, high heat days, which is that's the wet bulb problem, right? We're getting close. We are in a tornado zone. I am in a hurricane zone, right? I'm not in a flood zone, thankfully, but flooding is a major thing. And so, like, there is a non-zero, and I think about this, right? And I thought about that when I decided this is where I'm going to live probably the rest of my life, which is that reasonably, given the way things are going, something involving the reality of climate change will be either directly responsible for or in conversation with my death.
Right.
And hopefully that looks like, best case scenario, I'm on life support somewhere and a generator goes out and then I, slough off into the night or whatever. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is a tornado hits my house and kills me, right? Which is, again, viable. This past year, we've had several close calls of right north of me, right south of me. So I think that seriously. And there's a way that I think about these climate change, extinction novels, the ways that happen. Termination Shock, the Stevenson novel, I think hits on some of this too, which is that if you take it seriously and you think about it, the reality of global warming, climate change, all these things, if you engage with it as it is a useful frame to put yourself in to think about it, because it is both real and a thing that you can speculate about with a lot of confidence and fun and interest. Like in some ways it's, I don't know. I don't think there's very many other speculative or science fictional ideas that operate the same way, where on one hand we have to have literature that engages with it to apprehend it, but on the other hand it's right around the corner and it's already happening. Maybe if you read Station 11 today, maybe there's a similar feeling, right, of like, both this is a speculative proposition, but also I have enough information about what it would really be like in order to really put myself there. And that's kind of a rare vibe and a rare feeling in science fiction novels. We don't, we haven't had alien invasions.
I think a lot about how, I don't know how true this is, but depictions of nuclear apocalypse are credited with part of the turn away, hopefully the real turn that sticks away, right, from the use of nuclear weapons in war. A very small...
The day after, very famously, right?
Yeah. Right. Like on the beach, and like, they're like, they're like public broadcast stations around the world that did variations on, here's what it's going to look like if a nuke goes off, as well as all of these science fiction writers doing all kinds of stuff about it.
Yeah.
A very tiny percentage of people on the earth actually know what nukes are like, right? But popular media managed to make that a big enough concern that we did something about it.
Yeah.
And it feels like we haven't done that for climate change and global warming. Even though there's a lot of stuff out there, there's a lot of anxiety about it, it doesn't feel like enough of it has like reached the pitch it needs to get. And so that's part of what I like about a book like this, is it is taking it seriously. It's not, I don't want to say like it's a serious book. I also don't want to say it's like a not a serious book, but it's not a preachy book per se.
No, not at all. It takes several things just factually to be the case, and then within that plays around a lot.
I was reading this time, I was contrasting it in my head with Don't Look Up, which is a film I kind of loathe.
I did not see it. It did not seem to be a thing I was going to be interested in.
On the one hand, it's like it's preaching to the choir, right? And it's like it is made for the people who already believe and vote the way it wants you to believe and vote.
Mm-hmm.
But it has this sort of, I don't know, smirking helplessness to it. I won't get into it too deep if you haven't seen it. But
no, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. But I was just contrasting with this has this more, I don't know, this sort of like wry energy to it in a way that I kind of dig, even though there's no real solutions here. And I don't want to jump ahead too far, but so it has the two epilogues, one being like way later.
Yeah.
I don't want to take the idea that the Earth will be okay as like, right, as a panacea to what's going on now, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that got to die in between here and the Earth being okay. Yeah. It feels like a quietism, right?
It feels like a quietism, but I feel like it also somehow keeping that in the mix is, I feel like, important to my sense of balance.
Interesting. You don't think that's just messianic in nature? Like, of course, we'll all be delivered in the kingdom of heaven kind of stuff?
No, not really. It's more like this. This is something I've thought about a lot, about how like when you care about the natural world a lot and you care about non-human life as well as human life a lot.
Yeah.
You get into this weird thing. I've been trying to think about a better way to think and talk about this. Where like you can love the land, but the land cannot love you back.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
Like that's a thing you're doing. And to me, somehow keeping that in my head as I worry about this stuff, that all the other things out there, the non-human life out there, for that matter, like the non-living things out there, they're kind of doing their own thing. As much as like humans writ large are this crisis that we're in, we're causing it.
Mm-hmm.
But you still don't want to like use that as an excuse for kind of like species exceptionalism, and that like we will also be the ones to fix it. Like, no, we should try to mitigate things and fix things, but we're still not like God's only special little critters and nobody else matters. Like things will keep going without us.
Which is kind of the KSR maneuver, right? Like at the end of the day, a lot of the time we are God's special little children in those kind of climate focused books.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Which is a hard thing to sit with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But having like a little dose of that in here, I don't know. I find that a little bit balancing somehow.
Yeah. I think that's an important, I think the absolute agnostic nature of the planet to human life is very important, to any life, right? Like, this is the thing that conservatives love to bring up, and it's an interesting and provocative point. I think the framing is bad, but the fact is true. Species go extinct every day. That happened before human beings had any impact on the climate, and it's going to happen after they do. And so, yeah, the Earth is, and this is why philosophers get so weird about it, right? The Earth is like this awful monster, right? It's capital N nature is this creature. This is our regular back and forth about me not caring about the work of Morton, right? Which is just like, you're described. There's a more primal thing I think going on here than the hyper object or whatever it is. But I think you're right. I think that there's an effective, maybe it's not useful, maybe there's an effective guarantor at the back of everything. All bets are finally guaranteed by the house, and the house is the thing that'll eat it out. That'll eat everything. That'll consume everything and doesn't need you, and is profoundly uncaring about your existence. And that opens you up to like this weird, I don't know if it's special children, this like arch villain of reality kind of status, which is like, well, we actually have the ability to wound the Earth. And maybe that is the mark of humanity in the substrate of geology, is that we will wound the Earth in several ways that will last for millions of years, long after we are gone as a species or ineffective as a species, right? Or longer, or when we are something that doesn't look like us anymore.
Yeah. Something about that geologic perspective I always find very fascinating and kind of funny, right? Like, you can mark the Anthropocene with like trinitite, right? That like now there's a new mineral that wasn't around before.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I also love thinking that like all the different kinds of trash we've generated, like if in theory way in the future, like there are going to be like veins of like discarded AOL online CDs, you know, like everything you can think of has been made in such quantity that there will be like, you know, lines of rock in it representing whatever that thing is. But also, I think there's something, I'm really jumping the track here, but part of what I like so much about the Racine Halyard back and forth in here is Racine constantly poking holes in all these things.
Yeah.
And I think if she had been given a chance, she would have poked a hole in the idea that the Earth will go on without us as like this excusing thing, or that, you know, extinctions happen anyways without us.
Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot about how much I get frustrated when I see in political discourse this idea that like history will judge.
Yeah.
And it's like, A, it might not. B, who cares? And C, eventually it won't, because eventually there won't be history, right? Like at some point there will not be history. So you shouldn't do it for that perspective. You've got to pick some other kind of metric, some other kind of time frame of where your ethics matter. And it can't just be that alien anthropologists will dig us up one day, right?
Yeah, it's profound. When I see that, and I understand it does feel good. And I don't think people should feel bad for feeling good, right? Like, at the end of the day, I think what that rhetorical maneuver does for people, it allows them to say, in the fullness of time, this will be judged as wrong, which has a time-honored tradition of helping people understand the condition they're in. I absolutely get it. But I think that also really misunderstands historically all the other major inflection points where things like that mattered, which is to say that in every time period that, if you're an American, for example, if you're an American, every time period that we look back on and we go, that's bad. And we should acknowledge it and understand that it was bad. So enslavement, indigenous genocide, dispossession from various different groups, massive extinction of different species that have happened on purpose, all this kind of stuff,
right.
Big and small. Every single time one of those things happened, there are lots of people at the time also pointing and saying, this is bad. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't require history to do that. It required human beings in the moment who were willing to do all kinds of things to make it stop. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but they did say it at the time. Very few people, I think it is, I don't know about very few people. We don't have a lot of documentation about people who sat at home and said, I think this is bad and history will be the judge of this, because they didn't really have much of an effect on things. And I think that's a worthwhile historical lesson to think about too, right? Maybe those people existed or not. They didn't really have much of an effect one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it too, is that feeling that like by positioning yourself as having the right opinion, you have therefore sort of redeemed yourself.
Yeah. And again, like people have always done that. It makes them feel good. And probably it is good, like in some like big calculus of good and bad.
Right.
But it's not really the I don't think, look, I'm just a little bit of a historian. I don't think it is I don't think it's the prime mover of making things happen.
I think that's one of the weird tension points in reading books like this. I'm thinking about Ministry for the Future, lots of other eco-fiction, climate fiction, solar punk stuff. And back to like, for that matter, I was talking about Edward Abbey before we started, like, back to the Monkey Wrench Gang, right? Like trying to find, you pick up a book like this, you recognize a lot of it. Like for me, this really speaks to me a lot. Like, and it is very funny, but it's also like hitting me really close. Like I'm incredibly deeply sad about the idea of species I don't even know exist getting wiped out by deep sea mining operations. Like that hurts me. And you read something like this and you want to know what to do. But of course, it's not the book's job to tell you what to do, right?
Yeah.
And I think the way that these books in various ways think about societal reform, or they think about direct action, they think about eco-terrorism, like it's these sort of like unsatisfying windows, right? Because like I don't have a catapult with bioengineered panda tumors that I can like fling at someone. And if I did, it probably wouldn't change anything, right?
Yeah. You'd feel better though.
It would feel better, right? If I could fling that panda tumor at somebody. And I think this book is a little smarter than a lot that I've read in not being preachy about it, but also not dismissing it, right? Like it ends with this vision of there are still people out there doing like direct action and trying to raise consciousness and not dismissing that, even though it's also kind of funny and ridiculous at the same time.
Unfortunately, the future will be born out of the complexity that the past was also, you know what I mean? Like our current moment was made out of like a jumble of things that occurred. There's no arrow of history. There's just things that occurred, and some of them produced really good outcomes, and some of them didn't. And you have to be responsible, and you got to try to educate yourself, and you got to try to drag other people along with you, or be willing to be dragged. I think currently in the world we live in, one of our primary issues is that we're not willing to be dragged. I think part of making political movements go is taking in some information and saying, I'm happy to follow a thing here, which we have spent, my whole life, more than my whole life, having it hammered into us that that's like the most immoral thing you can do is join a thing. And so I think there's, some of that work to be done. And I think the book's pretty good on that too, of saying you might think that you're a little researcher off by yourself enacting some fantasy, but you're not. You're tied up in a social web of all kinds of different things, and whatever you do and whatever they do impacts each other. So maybe you should take that seriously. Because that's kind of what this whole book is in terms of the events that it proceeds through, is the recognition of the thing that the intelligence life officer, whatever her actual job title is, determining if things are intelligent or not, that's tied up in a network of all these other different things. And the genetic, researcher folks who are like making their own pseudo-humans or whatever, like that's its own thing tied up with the other people. And it proceeds through finance, and it proceeds through social connection, all that stuff. It proceeds through like undergraduate philosophy classrooms, a friend of mine who I had read the book, the reason I had him read it, he's a PhD in philosophy. And I was like, it's, the utilitarianism flies, right?
Oh my gosh.
They're
so
flies
good.
that are produced, they're genetically engineered, they are produced, they have the most pleasure a being could have for their very short lifetime, and then they die. And like it's creating like a calculus of generating just more pleasure than suffering in the world, and so therefore that's good. And I was like, this is perfect.
It's so good.
Yeah,
the yay flies. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
And again, I love that inauthentic but genuine dumb guy Halyard being like, maybe that's good, right?
Yeah, maybe that's great. And you're like, no, I think this is poking a huge hole in the balloon of this notion. Right?
There are these stinking piles of dead gnats piling up on the beach.
Yeah, that are ruining like other people's lives and livelihoods. It's a real, that whole section, what is the name of the like little seasteading colony they have? It's a little seasteaded operation that has these research labs on it. And it's such a funny adventure game from the 90s puzzle they have to do of like, the flies are clogging the thing. How do we get the flies out? And that's a full 80 pages of this book is solving an adventure game puzzle. I loved it. I thought that was
figuring
great.
out like which lever to pull to close the flue.
Yep. I've pulled the yellow lever, which made the flue close and reset the blue lever. We gotta, all that stuff's good.
It's funny reading this on a structural level that this book, there's not a ton that happens, and I kind of dig that. It's kind of like 4 or 5 things happen, and they just kind of get pinballed around. I think that thematically works with them thinking they have, like Halyard thinking he has these plans, but really they're just kind of getting pinged around by bigger forces, right?
Yeah.
And it has like, well, we're here. We'll go here and look for the fish. And the fish isn't there, but they meet somebody random, and it sends them off somewhere else. And it has this sort of, this lightness to it. This is kind of a formal aside, but a lot of conversations over the last couple years about thinking about like the difference between like novels and novellas, thinking about like where like length changes a thing.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this book this is a great example to me of like the tight sub 400 novel and just like nailing it. Like there's a lot going on in this book, but it really just cranks through it. Yeah. I just think that works. And again, it goes back to how these characters are and how they work, goes along with it as well, that there is no master plan.
In terms of thinking about structure too, you could split this up into 5 short stories if you wanted to. Like there's a way that this almost is the structure of a fix-up in terms of being very discrete events that are about very different things in different locations. And then at the end, there's a kind of, in the last, 100 pages or maybe even 80 pages, there's this kind of like loop around to be like, actually, this other character was in all these other places at the same time, and you saw them through the window and all that kind of stuff in order to kind of bring it like you would do for a fix-up. And I don't know if Bowman, when I finished reading this book, I emailed Ned Bowman. I was like, hey, this is a great book you wrote. We had like a short exchange back and forth, but maybe I'll email him and I'll just ask. like, what's up? Like, how'd you put this book together? You just write a bunch of short stuff and then staple it together? Because it does have that feeling.
I can totally see that. It's got the Extinction Credits short story idea. It's got the Mayflies idea.
Yeah.
It's got the CAPTCHA. Oh my gosh, I love the CAPTCHA.
CAPTCHA's great. Yeah. Did you say it? Yeah. Did you say it in your summary about the CAPTCHA? Maybe you didn't.
Oh, I don't think I didn't. No. So there's this, for people who haven't read this. So they mention a couple different places that in general in the background in this world is that funguses are just going amok, which is in fact happening.
Because the humidity is going up worldwide. Yeah.
R.I.P. frogs. You were cool.
Yeah.
There's this fungus that infects cattle, and it just sort of like distorts their faces and other parts. It sort of like creates these little plaques and stuff, but it's not deadly. But it makes it so that it's evolved so that camera recognition can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just so good. And that to me is like that's a very like Bruce Sterling, Cadigan era kind of idea.
Yes. It's so Bruce Sterling to be like, all right, I read an academic article. I'm ready to go. Here we go. Pump on the gas.
But yeah, the last third of this book, like huge plot points rely on the fact that I can make my face ugly enough with a fungus that cameras can't recognize me. That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, and it ties in with a bunch of the social protest stuff that we've seen, at least going back through Hong Kong and probably further than that. A lot of pro-democracy protests worldwide where facial recognition's part of the toolbox and you have to respond to it in some way. And so we've seen people doing a lot of using kind of splitter camo and painting on eyes on their face and doing a lot of things that just kind of make it very difficult for robots to immediately recognize you. And I like the idea that a fungus, because the process for creating CAPTCHA is this like forced evolution almost, which is that if the cameras can see the fungus, then they'll
pull the cow out, right?
Yeah, it pulls the cow out. So like the thing that you would do in this accelerated evolution is it would create more and more difficult conditions for the camera to work. So the more mutant versions of the fungus are the ones that survive the most. It is a great playing out of an idea from Bowman, I think. They're like top tier science fiction writing in that way. I really, really love it.
Yep.
And yeah, you're right. Like the book turns into how many people can we infect with this in order to get around all these different systems.
Also, the last little bit with what's his name, Barca, the billionaire.
Yeah,
just like too on the nose. Like I was laughing, but I'm like, oh, this is just too Jack Dorsey. It's too Musk and Zuckerberg. You know, like this billionaire whose brain has absolutely run out his ears and believes this stuff that it takes so long to explain because it's obviously insane from the jump.
Yeah, his whole fixation is performing the final extinctions on these creatures, right? He murders them out of his game preserve. And it's all these people making their New Zealand bunkers. You know, it's buying the Hawaiian Islands. It's all this stuff, you know?
Yeah, we're going to live in space, says the guy who I am confident has never troubleshooted a printer, right? Like,
get him in there. Put him in space.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Give it a
Go
try.
ahead. Go tomorrow.
A little 18-month trial. See how it goes.
Send him to Mars.
Right?
Do an Aurora to him.
Oh, still haven't cracked that radiation problem, but just don't think about it.
I read 7 Eves. It's hard. Speaking of Neil Stephenson. Just put him in the water.
I've been circling for a long time. I need to do this. Actually, I was talking to Sean Gans about this. I want to do something about the conversation that Neil Stephenson and Kim Stanley Robinson are having. I'm pretty confident without reading each other's books, like just coming at it from the zeitgeist, right? Because like Aurora and 7 Eves come out like back to back, right? One being like, no, Planet B is a stupid ass idea that will clearly kill you. And the other being like, no, we could do it. We could do it with enough stuff.
Yeah.
And then the Ministry for the Future, which it does have big giant flaws, right? Like it goes big on crypto. It places all violent political action on India in this way that's really weird and kind of racist. But it also has this idea that like the way we're going to fix this thing is through mass social operations across the world that aren't all going to line up in this way that is, I think, genuinely pretty moving and inspirational. And then Stevenson does Termination Shock like 6 months later, which literally features the guy from the 30 to 50 Feral Hogs tweet as like,
it rules. It's such a like a profound maneuver. I love it so much to open that book because I got the book like the day it came out, and to open that book and be like, it's the Feral Hogs guy. And look, I got to tell you, okay, well, one thing, what's really funny about Termination Shock is it's also weirdly racist about India.
Yes,
it's like everyone agrees that that's part of the mix, I guess. But it has like a Indian superhero,
like a Sikh super ninja.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on there. It is interesting. I'm not a shooting 30 to 50 feral hogs guy. That's not me. But I did at the end of last summer have a feral hog issue at my house, and it's fucking scary.
Yeah, I believe it.
I know it's not really a swearing show, but I have to really say that out loud. It's scary when they're all around.
Yeah,
they are large. And they weigh 300 pounds, and they don't care about you. They're not scared.
I mean, even just like having been around like domestic hogs, like just watching them move around, you're like, oh, the reason you have so much to eat on you is because you're all muscle.
Yeah,
you're this machine that can do whatever it wants with a brain that's like closer to human intelligence than most things on the continent. Like
the first time I saw them in the woods, like the sounding, whatever the pack of hogs is called. First time I saw them, I was looking down the path in front of me, and I saw the like back half of the hog, the last one in the line, which I learned was then like maybe 25 hogs. I saw her go in front of me, and she was, I'm not exaggerating whatsoever, she was easily as tall as my stomach. And just the back half was poundage bigger than I am, like substantially bigger than I am. And I had, you're talking earlier about the kind of encounter with nature, like, oh, a fox, where I had a like deep dread, not panic, but like I should move very slowly, and I should move backward, and I should go away from where I am. It was like a real lizard brain kind of experience. It was wild. And then I saw the front light. When I got back to my house, I saw the front of the line of hogs, and I thought, that's scary. They're big.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Termination Shock has that, and then also has like, no, of course, like insurance and real estate agents are the people that will fix climate change, like with straight up neoliberalism. Like
that did make me feel better when they all go to Houston and they're like, think about the real estate you could have if only you fix climate change. And I thought, well, maybe they will do that.
That is, I mean, that's the thing that is so painful to be. To kind of be a leftist and a Marxist today, and like worried about the climate. And like, if things were really profit driven, we would do something different, right? Like if the invisible hand was actually connected to an invisible brain, like we'd all be on the same page here, because there is no money to be made in like a blasted hellscape. But
no, they just think they're going to outrace it. I've had the luck and misfortune. No, it's mostly luck to have been in a couple different places with discussions like this occurring, you know what I mean? With like business people or whatever. I try anytime I get an invite to anything that could teach me about the world that I don't know, I tend to say yes. And so I've been there, and I can really, the thing that's striking to me about business conversations I've been privy to from like large corporations I've been privy to that think about the future and the future condition of the planet is that they do not think about the future or the future condition of the planet at all. And they know that. They actually know it's a problem. I've seen that occur. I saw like a loans kind of person who was talking about like the future of loans. And he was like, yeah, we know the future is kind of going to be a problem, but we don't really have a good way of thinking about it. And my heart sunk. I was like, oh no. I was like, oh no. Like really, it was a profound and sad. It was the same feeling I had seeing the hog. I was like, I need to back up slowly.
That's a very Gibson-y, Sterling-y kind of conjunction there, right? Like, the Zaibatsu coming around the corner.
Sterling and Gibson and Stevenson, they have a vision of what corporate thought is that is much more sophisticated, I think, than actual corporate thought. Not individuals, but like corporations there's no vision of the future at all.
Stevenson, like for all that, like I think he has like all these like weird libertarian tech bro angles that colors a lot of stuff. He has a very fine sense for corporations as organisms that are actually very simple, right? And like he has a very fine sense for like, yeah, they have DNA and their life cycle is a quarterly earnings statement, and that's like the horizon that they can think on. He has a very clear-eyed vision of that.
Yeah, I think among the people I know who are like science fiction people, I think I'm one of the higher. I have a higher opinion of Neil Stephenson than many people do, even accepting, and not being happy with the fact that he is in some ways poisoned by the ideology he's swimming in. But I know a lot of people who are poisoned by that ideology, and most of them are not able to represent it very well.
Yeah,
and he's pretty good. I mean, all of his friends are these people, right? He was the first employee of Blue Origin. He's very happy to tell you that.
Not much else, but he'll tell you that.
He'll tell you that. Well, I forget what interview I read about that, but I read an interview where he talked about in fair detail about that, which was kind of interesting. He was involved with the organization for the long now or whatever, the Anthem clock. Jeff Bezos paid for the Anthem clock. The Millennium clock is on land owned by Jeff Bezos, right? Like, there's just some weird and interesting stuff that he's been privy to that it feels to me, like you're saying, that he's willing to put on the page and kind of work through. And even if he doesn't seem to be super reflective on it, he doesn't really need to be. It's pretty good just as a representation.
We've strayed pretty far from this little fish.
Yeah, you brought me onto this podcast.
Yeah,
I've listened to the stuff I do, right?
Let's take a quick break. I'm just going to grab a drink of water, and then let's come back to this book. I want to talk about a few more things here, and I want to ask a few kind of bigger questions to you. Bit in this about Inzidernal, is that what it's called? The drug they take that makes them not care that the food they eat is bland.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
that hit me. I'm a coffee guy. That just that destroyed me because we've been talking about that for decades in coffee. That any product that relies on terroir just doesn't do well when things start shifting around.
Right.
And it's not like we're not going to have coffee. It's not like we're not going to have caffeine. But the stuff you can grow, at 1,000 feet in a 90-degree swamp does not taste as good as the stuff that you can only grow at this particular altitude with a maximum temperature of 72 degrees a year.
Right.
Yeah, in Ontario, the heat dried up the sap in the maple trees. In Kenya, it wilted the coffee plants and invigorated their pests. In Champagne, it broke down acid in grapes. In Kentucky, it cooked the bourbon in its barrels. In Campania, the mozzarella buffaloes stopped lactating for a week after every bout of strange weather. And it just goes on, this list of all of these foods getting wrecked. And, and that even the staples, taste less good. We all know that, right? A winter hothouse tomato, right, is nothing on, a garden tomato at the right time, right?
Yeah.
And this idea that just, more and more food is going to be like that is just so incredibly depressing. And, again, one of those, bleakly funny and just really clever, this drug that basically just makes you okay with slop is such a perfect meta-critical commentary about I don't know,
the condition of everything.
I was can you take this before you go see the latest MCU release? You
zinged them, you got them.
But just that idea that what we need to survive this era is to care less.
Yeah.
And that's also how we got in this era.
Yeah.
I found that very poignant. If people are food lovers, wine lovers, coffee lovers, beer lovers.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like the willingness in this book to say that all points of life will be diminished by the destruction of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, yeah, sure. But I've read a lot of these kinds of books where, I wrote my dissertation partially on this kind of thing, right? On end of the world stuff, media. And weirdly enough, a lot of books just don't go there. It's just kind of secondary to whatever disaster is occurring. And the ones that do go there, they, the classic ones, Leaves of Grass, whatever, right? These classic apocalypse novels.
Wait, is it Leaves of Grass or
Not Leaves of Grass. The Death of Grass.
The Death
Don
of Grass.
Christopher, but in the U.S., No Blade of Grass.
Got it.
So
Last
that's what-
grass
not
on
leaves,
the left.
but blades.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. The Last of Grass.
Yeah.
So yeah, like a lot of these I don't
Cozy
know, like-
catastrophe kind of.
yeah, just these things. They leave food alone. I mean, not this book, but in the perfect valley when it finally occurs, even there, the food is good.
It's one of those like, balancing, there's no advantage to being a doomer, but there is advantage to taking the worst case scenario seriously, right?
Yeah.
And something I think about a lot, going back to the idea of like growing up in a place that was very, very wild, right? I mean, I could walk out my back door growing up, and I think it was like 15 or 20 miles before I would hit like a road or anything like that. Like, it was out there in PA. But, this is all a place that was clear-cut in the 20s. It was,
Right.
it's all coal mine territory. You find the tailings of it all over the place. The river going through my town is orange to this day from sulfuric drainage. And then you start reading stuff about the environmental history of, particularly of this continent, and this sort of like unfathomable bounty of life. You read about these flocks of birds darkening the sky, and you read about fish so thick in the river that you could practically walk across them. Those, obviously those are like migration events, and you start sort of realizing that I start realizing that even my idea of sort of like what wilderness and nature is already this sort of like place that's still recovering from this immense biological shock.
Yeah.
And this impoverishment. And again, like, I think there is a benefit to taking the worst case and the bad case scenarios seriously, but how do you balance that against sort of doomerism sort of paralyzing you? And I feel the same thing with this book, where I think taking the case that there will not be good coffee in the future seriously is important, but I have a hard time sort of balancing that against just like, do we just continue portraying like how doom and gloom things are going to be? Especially because even if like we miraculously turn everything around, like we're in for a bad time over the next couple centuries, kind of no matter what, right?
Yeah. We've hit several key marker points. I don't know. I think I'm out of step in some ways with this stuff. I totally take the point and have empathy with I spent a lot of time taking points today, but I have empathy with, the solar punk. We got to imagine better futures, utopia, and before that utopianism, against utopia or dystopia, like we need to have that. I don't really have any issue. And, maybe this is like, something else going on with me. I don't really have any issue. I can sit with an immense amount of psychological distress around these issues. It really doesn't bother me, and it doesn't induce in me, what we've called climate grief. That's one of the languages that we have now, climate melancholia. It doesn't really induce those things in me, if only because, like, I don't know, this all sits inside me within a bigger framework where, like, this is always happening. Like, it hasn't been this particular thing, but catastrophes all around us all the time. Disaster is always here in some way. And so, like, in my mind, what you have to do is you have to do something with the tools you have. I think that in my lifetime, I've watched nostalgia for a time that I can't put my finger on be used as a bludgeon against nearly everything I've ever cared about. And if there's anything I wouldn't want, it's that for my own nostalgia for a nature that I have no access to become a bludgeon to harm people. This is what the eco-fascists are doing right now. Like, you got to be careful about that. I know that Ben Schultz-Figueroa has been doing a lot of research on that stuff in the visual sphere right now, but look, there is a whole arm of like pseudo-conservationist, eco-friendly people who have the worst possible extinctionist beliefs that you can imagine, who are very influential and are going to colonize the space very quickly if we don't take their ideas seriously.
Yeah.
And I've done some reading on that. I have this project I've been working on for a while called Describe World, and the first part of it was about kind of the city I live in. Sean from SF Ultra did a long interview with him, and we kind of talked about criticizing space and place and things like that. And the next piece I'm working on is on Flannery O'Connor. And I think the piece after that, once I've finished that, the third piece will be about this. It'll be about kind of eco-fascists. Because, again, I care very deeply and specifically and regionally. Like, I have a geographic specificity of preservation that I care about. And they do, too. And this is like a set of competing values. And to me, sitting with climate grief and climate grief only makes you very vulnerable, I believe, to that line of rhetoric. And I think we have to be really wary about that, because I've watched people who are mournful about something they think they've lost in many different political categories become eaten by some of the most heinous beliefs and thoughts that I've ever encountered in my life over the past 5 years, even. So yeah, I think about that too. And I think there might be something, that's just off kilter about me too, where I just don't seem to feel, I don't have the same level of feeling about it as other people do. And I don't think that makes me special or good or anything like that. Please, no one misunderstand that. But I don't feel it the same way that other people do, despite being neck deep in it. I do a lot of research on this and a lot of writing about it and a lot of thinking about it. And it just doesn't hit me the same way.
I think that's a very well-made point, though, about not letting that sort of false nostalgia for something more perfect get twisted around. No,
that's the wedge they want, right? That's the ratchet
right.
that they need you to do. And I'm not going to name names, but in these conversations, even in the science fiction community, I see the right-wingers get brought up all the time. And if you only know the 2 or 3 things that they've written, you might not recognize that you're flirting with fascism over there.
And I know that has been a split and an argument in, I'm thinking things like, deep ecology, like back to Arne Næss, like in the 70s. Like there's stuff people argued about, right? Yeah. The people that wind up on the Greenpeace boat to protect the whales wind up there for very different reasons and can wind up going very different places.
I mean, we're living in an era that is valorizing Ted Kaczynski again. Yeah. Sometimes ironically and sometimes not ironically. And whatever, people can do whatever they want. I can't control for that. But I think you got to be aware of the other stuff that guy wrote in that manifesto is all I'm saying. Maybe pay attention to who gets to exist in the world that Ted Kaczynski is presenting to you,
and that, I mean, we should put some rails on this because we could go very long talking about eco-terrorism and ecological activism. One of the things that Venomous Lumpsucker, I think, does well is not go too far down that road, right?
Yeah,
and sort of
put
it as this is like a political thing that people are doing, and on that level, it's kind of it's a political thing people are doing, and generally good to raise consciousness about that without going down that. And I think if you want to, just we can't go deep on this, but as a line to people to think about more, to read about more, is that they're alongside the redemptive violence that characterizes a lot of the way, at least in America, we think about, right? Like things like blowing things up, right? That there's this, that's like an orgasmic redemption to go blow something up. But alongside that is that we have long traditions in indigenous groups and other people of holding on to a land and living there and being with it in a way that can be just as radical and is more long-lasting, right?
Yeah, the unwillingness to give the thing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the unwillingness to cede the thing that you care about to a narrative that's untrue or false. You know, right? You look at the no doppel stuff, right? I think that's a thing that's worth paying attention to over the past several years in terms of what does a political movement look like that is orthogonal to the way that particularly American governmental politics has asked you to engage in social change.
What's no doppel? I don't think I'm familiar with that term.
The Dakota Access Pipeline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was hearing no doppelgangers.
No, I'm sorry. It's the acronym NODAPL.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
that whole movement.
The other thing with this too, that comes back around to, I was thinking about Chris Brown's book in the beginning of this, and what we've been talking about is poking around the areas where we actually live and is paying attention to the stuff that's there. It's an interesting thing this book does not do much of, right? There's nobody here that is kind of in the world taking it for what it is, right?
Yeah.
They all want it to be something else, or they all want to stay away from it. And I think along with the fact that, except for the, in my opinion, pretty funny, UK refugees in the camp here, everyone here, even though it's against this backdrop of the reality of how bad things get, everyone here is basically of immense privilege, right? The worst thing that we see happen is that Halyard has to eat subpar sushi for the rest of his life, right? That's his cross to bear. We don't see people really going through it, and we don't see people really up close to actually living in a place, right? They're all kind of bouncing around in this interesting way. Ressaint cares a lot about the lumpsucker and is come to care a lot about its intelligence as a thing, but she's mostly doing that through through lab work and through thinking about what these results mean. That's interesting. That's a distancing that's in the novel.
Well, across the board in the novel, so many people are attached to systems that have no attachment to any physical location. Like part of living in the future that is presented here is that to be attached to place is to be hopelessly hamstrung with your ability to do anything. Like there doesn't seem to be any job that lives somewhere. Like jobs that fit into the global economy must then circulate, because that's really part of the panic. It's not just being in debt or whatever for him. Part of the panic is losing his job, because that spirals you down. I love the stuff here about the United States, which is that it's gauche to talk about it. Like it's so it's
so funny.
It's over there, and look, you could see a world. From the vantage of where I'm standing today, we're not that far away from the other people in the world just being like, I guess whatever they're doing over there, we don't really want to know about it.
Just kind of cringe. I don't want to scroll to that channel.
Yeah, they're not doing anything good. So why? And the Hermit Island stuff or Hermit Kingdom about England, I guess the Isles. Does Ireland show up?
They don't really clarify, so I don't know. Yeah,
but there's this idea that. And I think it's a persuasive idea, unfortunately, but that the United Kingdom, maybe Ireland, a little unclear, and then the United States have functioned in such a way that their only purpose is to eat and purge themselves from the inside out over and over again. And so the rest of the world just kind of has to get along. They just kind of got to keep going, because these people that used to be very influential decided they didn't want to be anymore. And so now we ignore them. And that's happening right now.
Yeah, it's brutally plausible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like we're very rapidly, especially the United States, we're rapidly entering into a place where for everyone to have an okay economy, they need to just kind of stop pretending like we exist. And like if there's good and favorable conditions, great. That's a new market to sell stuff in. And if not, well, we don't need to depend on them. It's a massive, and this book does that in a non-spectacular way. It's not a Michael Crichton novel in that way, where that would be like a huge scab to pick on the whole book. It's not. It's just like, all right, well, that happened, and now we have to follow these corporations around who are doing all these different things. It really reminds me a lot, now that I'm saying that, of Islands in the Net, the Sterling book. I was talking about Sterling earlier. I like that book a lot. I don't think it's one that people... it's not schismatrix, right? It's not brought up all the time. But I think that book's really good. And part of its big innovation is just assuming that there is a multipolar world that is vibrant and real beneath the auspices of the unipolar world. That both actually are going to coexist. They will just kind of happen at different scales and levels. And for him, there's a little bit of a utopianism in there. It's Bruce Sterling doing the Bruce Sterling thing. But that kind of does seem how things are shaking out, and that is the world of Venomous Lumpsucker in some ways, which is like corporate capability attached to locales occasionally, but the big movers and shakers don't really exist anymore, other than as regulation.
Right.
And I guess China's in the background of everything, being like, we must enforce extinction cap and trade, and we have some sort of violence associated with that.
Although they've also kind of been hoodwinked in this little, or maybe not hoodwinked, but maybe just sort of like predictably a sort of like ethically motivated campaign just went sideways into the financial markets and quietly drowned there, which I guess that's not unrealistic.
It's not.
I do like you pointing out here, like this sort of like locationless. Well, it's almost like, right, if one stage of capital relied on the worker being sort of atomized, right, that the next level is this sort of like virtualization, right, of like not really existing anywhere. And that's again, that disconnection, and I don't want to make like capital L land and get like all like hippy dippy with flowers around my head as I say that, but that's like the core sin and the core problem here, right, is that none of these people are connected to the land. None of the people care about what happens.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, people do care a lot about the land, but about origins. Like, the people who are refugees from England, they want to go back, right? It's just not possible. And that's kind of the yearning of the end of the book, is like, what if you could go back? And then you find out that it's, this elaborate kind of loop around to hollow that country out to do something different with it, which is, again, that's a thing that's happened many times in England. What's the... You read that book, the Town That Died for England? You know what I'm talking
No,
about?
I don't know this.
I want to pull up. Tyneham. It's from 1995. About the military takeover of the village of Tyneham, with a new introduction taking in Brexit and a new wave of British nationalism. Shortly before Christmas in 1943, the British military announced that they were taking over a remote valley on the Dorset coast and turning it into a firing range for tanks in preparation for D-Day. The residents of the village of Tyneham loyally packed up their things and filed out of their homes into temporary accommodation, yet Tyneham refused to die. And I don't think they ever got to go back. And it just got hollowed out and literally, removed in order for the state to do its deal. And that feels a lot to me like this, but it's just with capital. Allowing capital to do its thing requires you to hollow out the world.
Huh. One of my college roommates was from North Centralia in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
Which was not evacuated because there's 40 people there. But literally he could look 2 blocks down to the smoke coming out of actual Centralia, where it's still going.
It seems bad.
Yeah.
I think they should get that under control.
Yeah, or at least use it as a background for some sort of evocative survival horror game, if, nothing else.
Yeah, are they still, busting people for going there?
Yeah, oh yeah. So, it'll kill you, man. This weird
Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, I think there's, fumes and stuff coming out
and
of the ground.
The worst part is, it's not the only one. If you go to, the Wikipedia page for Centralia, it will take you to lists of underground coal fires in the world. It is not the oldest or the biggest, but it's still going.
Great.
We've been talking about this book a good long time. There's lots of great stuff we didn't get to. I wanted to read this one line.
Please.
Another very Gibson-y, Sterling-y, kind of early cyberpunk vibe thing. But the way they talk about the AI designs in here, where they are stronger and better than things humans could have made, but they're so unsettling that no one likes them.
Yeah.
And someone here says they're talking about these buildings and how great they are, and it says it's a bit like saying a 2-headed puppy could lick twice as many faces, which he has so many great just zingers throughout this that I really dig. But I want to wrap up this book. People check it out. It's good. It's funny. Before we go, I wanted to ask you a little bit else. First off, where people can find you, and if you could tell us a little bit about what you're working on, and if you could tell us a little bit about Everything is Permitted, and for people who aren't gamers, give us a little context for that.
You can find me on Blue Sky, probably. That's the easiest place. You can go to ckunzelman.com. You can go to rangetouch.com. Any of those will take you to what I'm up to. I've been writing and making stuff for a very long time. You can see it all there in those various places. I wrote a book on science fiction and science fiction games a few years ago. You mentioned at the beginning. Still available. It's $21 in paperback. You can get access to it through anywhere books are sold. It's called The World is Born from Zero. I have a new book coming out, /is out, called Everything is Permitted. It's about the Assassin's Creed franchise. You might say, I don't play video games. I don't know about the Assassin's Creed franchise. Well, you probably care about science fiction. I would say that the Assassin's Creed is probably the number 2 or number 3, depending on how you count, biggest science fiction franchise in video games. It takes all of the things that people care about in science fiction and kind of wraps them into it and does stuff with them. So it's this big conspiracy narrative between the Assassins and the Templars that go back to an ancient aliens kind of setup, precursor race kind of stuff. And so the book is kind of split in half. First half are big ideas. So one's about interfacing. So what do we think media does to us and how? There's a chapter on conspiracies. So how do we put conspiracies into our fictions, and what does that say about us, and how do we work through our feelings about conspiracies? There's a chapter about precursor species, ancient aliens, that whole thing. How do we use that in fiction? What does it mean? I read a truly large amount of stuff of pseudo historians, and it felt like being beaten in the head over and over again for months. So there you go. I did it so you didn't have to. I learned about when Velikovsky came to the United States to lecture at Harvard and all that stuff. So those are some big ideas. About half the book are these just purely big ideas. How do they function? That is hyper readable by anyone and does not require you to know anything about the games. I tell you everything you need to know. Second half of the book is maybe for people who are more into being fans of the franchise, but again, I give you everything you need to know. And it's about stuff like open world game design. It's about designing for interaction. So what happens when you make things kind of appear regularly in front of players? How do we interact with it? There's a chapter about what happens when you play the enemy. So there's a couple games where you play the opposite faction. You play the Templars rather than the Assassins. What's going on with that? What happens when fiction inverts our expectations about what we're doing? And then there's a chapter on how we use games to talk about history, which is a big part of Assassin's Creed, but which people often take very flatly, I would say. Which is like, they do it, so then therefore, good. And I kind of dig through a lot of interviews and stuff to think about how they do it and why that might produce certain effects for people. That's what the book is about. That's the big summary of the thing. I think if you like science fiction, you'll probably like the book, I will say. And it'll probably give you an idea of which of these games you might want to play.
That's fantastic. A bit about the Ancient Aliens evoked an intense sense memory for me of being about like 13 years old at like 11 o'clock at night and the kind of stuff that's playing on the History Channel.
Yeah.
Chariots of the God musics. Yeah. Huh?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Chariots of the Gods is a really great experience of going from a book with a question mark in the title, Chariots of the Gods, to now the most recent edition, Chariots of the Gods.
Just straight up.
Straight up. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That could have had its own thing. I did not even think about that while writing the book.
A chapter on the topography. Oh my god.
That's right. Yeah, it's the whole thing.
That's good.
I love the story of Eric von Daniken just working at he was like a concierge at a hotel, and he just convinced someone about his ideas, and then he got a book deal.
That's fantastic. Does that still happen? I hope that still happens to people. Maybe not for that specific idea, but
yeah, it has to.
Yeah. Cameron, thanks so much. This has been really great. It's great to meet you virtually after knowing you online for a bit. And this book was fun to talk to. I feel like more than usual with this book, we have talked through, ideas and hang-ups and emotional political resonances. So that's been good.
Maybe deeply frustrating for someone who wanted us to talk about what is actually in the book.
Yeah.
But they should just read it.
Just read the book.
This book, I think, from both of us, has a strong thumbs-up recommendation. It is a book that is worth reading and good. And you will, every other page, find like a fun zinger or an idea that you hadn't thought about. We didn't even talk about what the scullers, the assistant robots or whatever in a real way, and those rule. Cool idea.
They're all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about I've got my list here of stuff. Well, we didn't talk about all kind of stuff. We didn't talk about parasitic wasps.
That's right.
Didn't talk about trolley problems.
There's a lot. Yeah, read the book. The book is good.
It's fantastic. So cool. Cameron, thank you so much. People listen to Cameron's other work. It's all over the place. And yeah, have a good one. A Meal of Thorns is a podcast from the Ancillary Review of Books, an online magazine founded to address the radical possibilities of criticism with a focus on speculative fiction, world literature, and utopian impulses. Go to ancillaryreviewofbooks.org for regular reviews, essays, interviews, and more. Our opening poem is by Bartra Hari, translated by John Bruff. Our music is by Giselle Gabrielle Garcia. Our artwork is by Rob Patterson at The Ratio Farm. Thanks to our human transcribers, Kate Dollarhyde and John W.M. Thompson. They are diligently working on getting us caught up on our transcriptions. If you'd like to support the podcast and the Ancillary Review of Books, that is rad. A few different ways you can do that. Join our Patreon. A couple dollars a month really moves us towards our sustainability and contributor paying goals. You can hang out with us on Discord, and we've got a couple other goodies in the works. If you're interested in a book we mentioned, buying from the bookshop link in our show notes or at the ARB website gets us a cut, and it helps us immensely if you just help get the word out about the show. Leaving us a review, commenting, or sharing on your platform of choice, that really helps. And it's nice to know you're listening. Questions, suggestions, pedantic notes about things we got wrong? Drop us an email at mealofthorns@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Blue Sky for periodic skeets, I guess. Did that term stick? Next up, we are diving back into dark academia, arguably with the text. Rosanna Pendlebury returns to discuss Donna Tartt's The Secret History. Check out our website if you want to read ahead. Thanks for listening, and stay critical out there.
I guess we have lots of letters of people being like, I don't agree. My dearest Amelia, I don't agree with this.